Hi, I'm Scott Jones, and this is the Attuned Parent Podcast. If parenting your teen feels heavier than you expected, you're not alone. On this podcast, we talk about what's really happening underneath anxiety, defiance, shutdown, and family conflict, using attachment science, nervous system awareness, and practical tools that actually work. Because behavior is protective before it's problematic, and regulated parents increase influence. Let's get started. I want to start today with a question that I hear all the time from parents, and it usually goes something like this. Is this normal for my teenager to be doing this, or is my kid, just really off the walls being disrespectful? How do I respond to that? Because when your teen eye rolls and snaps at you or goes completely silent or pretends like you don't even exist, those things feel really frustrating. And it can feel really personal. It can feel intentional. And if we're being honest, it can feel like a rejection. So here's the problem with that. When everything looks like disrespect, your brain defaults to one response: control. More structure, more consequences, more pressure. And I want you to hear this today during this podcast. That response, when it's misfired, doesn't just fail to help. It can actually make things worse. So if you misread what's happening, you'll mishandle the moment. So that's why today we're going to talk about how to slow this down. We're going to look at three things that can look identical on the surface: distress, defiance, and disrespect. And we're going to talk about why they are not the same and how that distinction matters almost more than anything else in those hard moments. So then I'm going to walk you through the ATTUNE framework, a 6-step tool we've talked about before, and how it can actually help you in real time with your teenagers. If you've been listening to the podcast for a while, you've heard me say regulated parents increase influence. ATTUNE is how we're going to do that. So let's start with back to that question. Why do parents misread this so often? The answer is actually pretty simple. Behavior is loud, but often the cause underneath the behavior is quiet. So think about what you can't see when your teen walks into a room and snaps at you. You can't see the anxiety that's been building all day, the shame that they're carrying around about something that happened at school, the sensory overload of maybe 6 hours of social performance. You can't see the fact that maybe they're genuinely terrified about something they haven't been able to tell you yet. What you can see is the attitude, the tone, the withdrawal, the resistance. And so your brain does what brains are designed to do in a moment of social threat. It simplifies. It pattern matches to the most available explanation. And for us parents, usually that's they're being disrespectful. Now, sometimes that's accurate, and we're going to get to that. But when it's the only lens you're using, when every eye roll and every slammed door gets filed under the disrespect category, you've lost the ability to read the moment correctly. And you've lost your ability to respond to what's actually happening. The neuroscience here is really important. Dr. Bruce Perry's research on trauma and the developing brain makes it clear that the adolescent brain is not just a smaller adult brain. It is a brain in active development with a reward and threat system that is highly reactive and a regulatory system that is just still being built. So when stress hits, teens are not choosing defiance over compliance. In many cases, their nervous system is genuinely just overwhelmed. And the behavior you're seeing is a nervous system doing its best to cope. So that kind of brings me to a line that I want you to take away from this episode. If you remember nothing else, I want you to remember behavior is protective before it's problematic. Now, that doesn't mean that all behavior is acceptable, obviously, but it means that your first job, before correction, before consequences, is to read what the behavior is actually protecting. Because if you can get that right, everything else changes. So let's define our terms, because these three things get collapsed into one category constantly, and they're not the same. So distress. Distress is a nervous system state. Your teen is overwhelmed internally and it's leaking out externally. That's not necessarily a choice. That's biology. So distress looks like irritability that seems disproportionate to the situation, shutting down, going silent, becoming unreachable. The I don't cares said with complete flatness, crying without being able to explain why, explosive reactions to small triggers. Those are all signs of distress. And what's driving it is anxiety, shame, overwhelm, sensory overload, unprocessed emotion. When a person is in distress, in a distressed state, the body is carrying something the mind hasn't been able to process. And that unprocessed weight will find a way out. The appropriate response to distress is not correction, it's regulation and presence. You're not addressing a behavior problem, you're helping a nervous system find safety. All right, second term, defiance. Defiance is developmental. And here's something really important. A certain amount of defiance is not only normal during the teen years, it's necessary. Adolescence is the developmental period during which your teenager is supposed to individuate, to begin separating their identity from yours and establishing their own sense of self. That process often looks like questioning rules and asking why, pushing limits to test where the line is, arguing their perspective with increasing intensity, and resisting family norms in favor of peer norms. That's not pathological. This is a teenager doing exactly what their developmental stage is designed to do. Research on the adolescent brain development confirms this. That drive for autonomy is hardwired into the adolescent experience. So the appropriate response to defiance is not suppression. It's structured engagement. You hold the limit while making space for their voice. The goal is not to eliminate all the pushback, it's to channel it in a way that preserves both the relationship and the boundaries. Okay, disrespect. Now, disrespect is different from the other two, and it is real. Disrespect is intentional. It involves a mocking or contemptuous tone designed to diminish your authority, repeated violations of clearly established boundaries, and behavior that communicates your authority just does not matter to me. This does require a direct response, but the response still needs to come from a regulated state, not from escalation, not from ego, not from anger, but from a calm, clear leadership. The reason this distinction matters so much between these three words is the response to distress and the response to disrespect are almost the opposite. If you respond to a distress state with control and consequence, you will make it worse. And if you respond to genuine disrespect with only empathy and warmth and no limits, you're going to lose the boundaries, and the teen loses the safety and the structure that your leadership provides. So reading the moment correctly is really important. It's really the whole thing. So now that you know what you're looking for, let's talk about what do you do about it? The ATTUNE framework is a 6-step tool for navigating high tense moments with teenagers. It's not a script, it's a sequence, an internal roadmap that reorients you from reaction to leadership. Each letter corresponds to a step, and the order matters. You can't skip to E if you haven't done A. So let's go through it. A is attentive presence. Slow down. This is the foundation of everything we're doing. Before you say anything, be present. Before you correct, before you redirect, before you engage, you have to check yourself. The question you ask yourself internally is something like this: am I regulated enough to lead in this moment? Because here's what the research tells us. Human nervous systems sync with each other. When you come into a room activated, frustrated, scared, defensive, escalated, you're not bringing calm into the system. You're adding fuel to the fire. And so the signature line for this step is one that I want you to memorize. And that has to be, I cannot calm a storm with another storm. You got to be the anchor. So attentive presence is not passivity. It's not giving in. It is the deliberate, disciplined act of becoming present before you engage. And sometimes that's really hard. In practice, this might look like taking one slow breath before you walk into the room, putting your phone down and making eye contact, softening your body language, uncrossing your arms, lowering your shoulders, relaxing your jaw, noticing the narrative in your head and choosing not to lead with that. This is where your influence starts, not with your words, but with your presence. Okay, T, track emotion. Now, instead of reacting to the behavior, you're going to observe what's going on underneath. The question you're asking internally is, what might they be feeling right now? And which category does this fall into? So we're looking at things like body language. Are they tight, closed off, slumped, agitated? Tone. Is it flat, sharp, frenetic, defeated? And then what's the context? What's happened today? What's coming up this week? What might be difficult for them lately? If the energy is overwhelmed and shut down, that's often distress. If they're pushing back and arguing their case, that's likely defiance. But if the tone is contemptuous and the behavior is clearly aimed at undermining your authority, that's disrespect. John Gottman's research on emotional attunement is really the foundation here. The parents who successfully navigate these moments are not the ones with the perfect response. They're the ones who slow down long enough to actually read the emotional data in the room. This step is really the difference between reacting and leading, between seeing behavior and seeing your kid. Okay, the next one, the second T, is for take responsibility. This step is powerful, and it's the one that most parents skip. Before you address what your teenager brought into the room, you have to ask yourself, what am I bringing into the room? What am I bringing to this moment? Because sometimes, not always, but sometimes the escalation is not just your teen. It's in the interaction. Your tone came in sharp. Your timing was off. You led with a lecture instead of a question. Your stress from work followed you home through the front door. Taking responsibility often sounds like this. Hey, I think I came in a little strong there. Let me try that again. Or I realized my tone was off. I'm sorry about that. Or I've been really stressed today. I don't want that to land on you. These type of statements don't weaken you. It doesn't give you your teen the upper hand. It builds trust. It models emotional accountability in a way that perfection just doesn't. And here's what I've seen clinically over and over. When a parent takes responsibility for their part, the teenager's defensiveness drops. Not always immediately, but it drops. Because the implicit message is, I'm not here to win, I'm just here to support. Okay, next, you understand the need. Every behavior is meeting a need, even the most frustrating ones, even the ones that feel like they have no logic. So the question is, what need is this behavior trying to meet? Some of the most common needs underneath difficult teen behavior include a need for space and maybe sensory decompression after a long day, a need for control in a world that feels pretty overwhelming and unpredictable, a need for validation, to feel seen and not just managed, a need for relief from anxiety or shame or social pain that they haven't been able to name, and a need for connection. Sometimes behavior that pushes you away the hardest is really a bid for you to stay. James Gross's research on emotional regulation tells us something really critical here. When emotional needs go unmet, they don't disappear, they intensify, and they find less regulated exit points. So when you understand the need underneath the behavior, you stop fighting the symptoms and you start addressing the actual source. You can't correct a nervous system what a nervous system is trying to protect. Next, we have N. N is for name the emotion. This is where connection really happens, and it's simpler than most parents think. You just put words to what you're observing, not to tell them how they feel, but to reflect back what you're seeing with enough accuracy that they feel understood. So that sounds like, hey, can I tell you something that feels off to me right now? Or it seems like you're carrying something pretty heavy today. Or you seem really frustrated right now. I get that. Or something's going on. I don't know what it is, but I can feel it. The neuroscience behind this step is really well established. You've maybe heard of the phrase name it to tame it, and the research backs that completely. Labeling an emotion reduces activation in the amygdala and shifts processing back towards the prefrontal cortex. So you are literally helping your teen's brain regulate by naming what you see. And the crucial distinction that frees parents up here is naming an emotion is not agreement. You're not saying their behavior is okay. You're not conceding the argument. You're just acknowledging their experience. And that signal of being seen is what lowers defensiveness enough for real conversations to happen. Okay, finally, we have E. E is for encourage connection. So now, and only now, you can guide. This is the step where parents sometimes worry they've lost the thread. They've been present, they've tracked, they've named the emotion, and now they think, feels like I just let them off the hook. No, you have set the foundation for influence, and now you have to use it. So encouraging connection with guiding sounds like this. I want to understand what's going on for you, and we still need to talk about what happened. Or I'm not going anywhere. Let's figure this out together. Or I love you, and the expectation has not changed. You are holding both things at once, both warmth and structure, connection and expectation, the relationship and the limit. Your influence as a parent has never come from your volume or your consequences. It comes from your regulation and your relationship. So this step is where you cash in on everything that you've built. So let's put the whole thing together in a real scenario. I want you to hear what this actually might sound like and when it's working. So here's the scenario. It's 7 on a Tuesday night. You've had a long day. And your teen walks in from school, drops their bag, and you ask pretty reasonably, hey, how'd the test go? And they snap back, why do you always ask me that the second I walk in? Can you just leave me alone for once? So here's what the old pattern might look like. A reactive response looks like, and I want to be clear, this response is really human, but it's kind of what we were all modeled as we grew up, and it doesn't work. So that response might look like this. Hey, don't talk to me like that. I ask you a simple question and you're being really disrespectful. Your teen escalates, you get angry, doors slam, silence, nobody wins. Both of you go to bed feeling disconnected and unseen. Now, that's not a parenting failure. That's just two nervous systems colliding without a plan. So ATTUNE gives you a plan. Here's the ATTUNE response. A, attentive presence. You feel the sting of that snap back. You notice your chest tighten. And instead of reacting to the disrespect, you pause. Physically, you take a breath, you lower your shoulders, and you remind yourself, I'm the adult in the room. My calm is the anchor. Track emotions. You look at them. You really look. That tone was sharp, but their body language is slumped. They look exhausted, not contemptuous. This feels more like distress, not disrespect. Maybe something happened today. Take responsibility. You say, quietly without defensiveness, whoa, I think maybe my timing was off. You just walked in. Let's give it a few minutes. You understand the need. You recognize they need to decompress before they can talk, and you give it to them. You might say something like, do you need a few minutes? How about a snack? I'm not going anywhere. I just want to hear about your day. N, name the emotion. When they don't respond, you name what you see gently and without accusation. You might say something like, "You seem really overwhelmed right now." And that's okay. I've had a hard day too. And then you encourage connection. You close with warmth and you open a door. Hey, I'm going to give you some space, but I do want to hear about your day when you're ready. And we're going to come back to that tone. That's a conversation we still need to have. And that's it. There's no lecture, there's no consequence, there's no escalation, there's no power struggle. You held a limit, that tone will be addressed, but you led with regulation and connection. And you preserve the relationship that gives you access to the actual problem. That's what ATTUNE makes possible. So here's what I want you to carry out of this episode. Most parents walk into a hard moment asking, how do I stop this behavior? The focus is in the wrong place. What I want you to start asking is, what is the behavior telling me? When we realize that behavior is never random, it's always a signal, it's communication. It's a nervous system doing its best to cope. It's a teenager trying to protect something, maybe their dignity, their sense of belonging, their identity, their sense of safety. When you can read that signal correctly, when you can stand in the middle of the eye roll and the slam door or the I hate you and say to yourself, this is information, that's not personal, then you stop reacting and you start leading. And that's the shift. That's what ATTUNE gives you. It's not a perfect response. It's just a better orientation, a way of seeing your child that is larger than the moment you're currently standing in. Because regulated parents increase influence. That's not just a line. That is the whole thing. So if you take nothing else from today, take this. Not all behavior means the same thing. And when your teen pushes back, before you react, before you correct, before you set the consequences, just pause long enough to ask one question. And that question that just changes everything. What is this behavior telling me? Is this distress, defiance, or disrespect? And then do your best to attune. Your teenager doesn't need a perfect parent. They need a present one. They need a connected one. They need one that's willing to take responsibility and do their best. They need a parent who can see past the behavior and respond to what's underneath it. And that's you. And you're already doing better than you know. So if this episode was useful, please share it with a parent who's in the thick of it right now. We really want these messages and this help to get out to as many people as we can. Follow the ATTUNE parent whenever you listen. And if things feel like maybe they're becoming more than you can handle alone, reach out to Stillwater Academy. The link is in the show notes. Remember, the relationship is the intervention, and you're doing the best you can. Keep it up. I'll see you next time.